Salut, ça va? Well, there are two expressions that are worth talking about. They're expressions which both of them are informal, which you would use with someone your age, a peer, someone with whom you're relatively relaxed, comfortable. You wouldn't use them in a formal setting with an adult whom you'd never met before, for example. Salut is hi, more or less, as opposed to bonjour, which is a little more appropriate for anyone. And then ça va, is a question, but oddly enough, it's also an answer. Ça va means how are things going, roughly. And so you'd say ça va as a question, and the answer to that question is ça va. Ça va means things are going. In other words, things are fine. You can add to that the word bien, which is well. Ça va bien, things are going well. But that's a very, very, very common expression, which you'll hear in France or in any French-speaking country. So it's good to pick up on. So let's practice it. First, repeat after me. Salut. Okay, there you hear that U sound. That sound which is, you don't make it with relaxed muscles in this part of your face here. You make it with these muscles tightened, and the sound E pronounced through the smallest possible opening in your mouth. U. Okay? It says a lot of muscular tension right here. Salut. If you don't tense up these muscles, you'll say salut. Or salut, salut, I guess. And that will sound horrific to a French-speaking person. So, salut. Ça. Even the sa, is chopped short, that vowel sound there. Huh? Salut. Okay. And then, ça va? Again, ça va? So that's a question. You know it's a question because you raised your voice. The answer is ça va. So your voice comes back down again in the answer. Here we go. I'll say it to you, and you respond. Salut, ça va? And you could just say ça va. Since I already had said salut, I suppose you could repeat it back to me. Okay, now you initiate the conversation. You greet me and then ask me how things are going. Ça va bien, merci. Okay. Well, in the course of the last class, I mentioned that as we look through lesson 1.25, we'd come at the end of the lesson to a section where you had to construct sentences. And that's what we would focus on today. So that in fact, will be the case. So let's take a look at lesson 1.25 right now. Well, here you see we're inside lesson 1.25. And this particular section here begins with a study of a review of the verb avoir, an extremely important verb which you'll use in many contexts, and it's very appropriate that this whole section focuses just on the verb avoir because sadly its conjugations, its forms are very irregular, very bizarre. For example, you'd like to think that it's j'ave, tu have, il have, elle have, and vous avez. Well, one of those five right there is correct. Vous avez is indeed the proper form for speaking formally to someone and communicating this idea, vous avez. However, the other forms, the singular forms, are all, which preceded vous, are all very irregular. We say, first of all, as you undoubtedly have already heard, j'ai. Now, j'ai is really a combination, of course, of je and et. But je, being one of those short little French words ending in the sound e, before a vowel sound in the following verb, contracts. And so we say j'ai. That's followed by tu as, so the sound e changes to a, tu as, il a, or elle a also. By the way, this is one of the reasons why I don't present to you the written word at this point. Tu as, il a, elle a sound identical, don't they? They're not spelled the same. But that's not our problem until Unit 2. Beginning in Unit 2, and that issue will stretch on for quite a few units actually, as we work on the ability to read first and then to write the French language. Okay, well, let's take a look at the sentences down below that we're to form. The first one right here is how would you say this expression? Just this idea. We just said it recently. Yeah, okay, it's j'ai. So j'ai, and now you must make a choice. Here you have one of the vocabulary words that was presented to you in the previous section, the section just above this one. In which you learn supplementary vocabulary that corresponds to the verbs that have just been introduced to you. And this vocabulary revolves around the issue of the school setting, things you might talk about in a school. And so this vocabulary word is this one right here, this blue thing hanging on the guy's back. If you don't know it, maybe you're not really ready for this section. You may need to go back to the previous section and really focus on that before you move on to this section in the lesson. It's sac à dos. Now I just said sac à dos, which is a no-no. It's you don't just say the noun without saying, as you're learning the vocabulary, the definite article, le or la or L apostrophe. However, I'm doing it intentionally here, sac à dos, because I want to just see, have you already learned whether this is a masculine or a feminine word? We already know it doesn't start with a vowel sound. It starts with the consonant sound s. So the proper definite article that precedes it would not be we can't say le sac à dos. That's a little too awkward. So it's either le sac à dos or la sac à dos. Which of the two is it? Okay, maybe you know the vocabulary word, but you're not quite so sure about the gender. Well, I would say it's basically the same thing. If you don't know the gender, whether it's le or la, you don't really know the vocabulary word itself either. And so again, you would need to go back to the preceding section. But I'm going to assume, so we can continue here, that you have learned that it's le sac à dos, meaning that it's a masculine noun. Well, as you see in the sentence, we're saying, I have a backpack. And so we don't want to say the backpack, the specific backpack, but just a backpack. So we have a choice between un, which, by the way, I always tell my students when I'm in a classroom situation, is pronounced just like someone, you're playing football, for example, and you got a helmet to the stomach. It's un, okay, maybe not quite so violent as, but un. And then the feminine form for a or a is une. Well, because we're saying it's le sac à dos, it's a masculine noun, we say j'ai un sac à dos. Let's try the next sentence now. In the next sentence, you have a number. Since this is an important issue, it's the, and I just lost entirely my sentence, excuse me. There we go. We know that definite and indefinite articles will modify. The words the, a, and, some will modify to fit the noun that follows them. So you'll say un sac à dos, but if I want to say some backpacks, I would say des sacs à dos. If I'm talking about, let's see, something feminine, a classroom. Since we're talking about the school setting, I would say une salle de classe. Une salle de classe. So un can change to une. When I'm referring to the plural, un and une both go to des when I want to say some. In the same way with the definite articles, le is used for some nouns, but la for others, and then L apostrophe before a vowel for either masculine or feminine, and how all of them in the plural are les. So the definite article is always in flux depending upon what the noun is that follows it. That's not the case with other words such as the number 3, trois. This is not an article, and therefore don't try and change it in any way. It is what it is. Trois is trois is trois is trois. It doesn't vary. And so here we want to say, how would you say these first two, the subject and the verb? Yes, tu as. Who cares how it's spelled? Tu as trois sacs à dos. Okay, so when you say the number trois, you don't have to stop and think, is this a masculine or a feminine noun following trois? It doesn't make any difference. Trois will never change. It's only articles, the words corresponding to a, and, some, and the, which will modify before a vowel, before, certain nouns. Okay. Here we have, he has some backpacks. Okay, how would you say that? Good, you know it's il a. Okay. Now the word for some, whether the noun is masculine or feminine, is always the same. It is des. That's right. So il a des sacs à dos. Il a des sacs à dos. And by the way, since we've been focusing on pronunciation lately, let me remind you again, des, not day. Okay, don't let your mouth change its shape. And cut that vowel sound short. Des sacs à dos, des sacs à dos. Notice how I said do. I didn't say do. Sac à dos, des sacs à dos. That's awful. It's des sacs à dos. Then cut the vowel sound short, and once you start to say the sound o, don't let your mouth change whatsoever. Des sacs à dos. Okay, let's move on to the next series of 3 words, and here we have 3 sentences, and here you have livre, the word for livre, which undoubtedly you learned in the last section. Is it le livre? Is it la livre? Okay, if you're not sure, you don't really know that vocabulary. Maybe you know the word livre, but if you don't know it's le livre, as opposed to la livre, which means something different, by the way, you don't really know that vocabulary, and you really need to go back to that previous section. So make sure that as you're learning vocabulary, you say the definite article, the word the, le, la, or L apostrophe, as you also say the noun. Otherwise, you don't truly know the vocabulary. So it's le livre, at least in this context. Do you know what la livre is? Le livre is book. La livre is pound, like the weight of measurement we use in the English-speaking world. La livre, as opposed to the kilo. By the way, you know what a kilo is? If you go to France, you need to know what a kilo is. A kilo is 2.2 pounds. How do we say it in English? A kilogram? A kilogram is 2.2 pounds, and in French you call that un kilo. And so saying la livre completely changes the idea of a book to talking about a weight of measurement, the word pound, and it's not what we want here. So make sure the gender is correct. You change the gender, you may change the meaning of the word. Okay, so how would you say she has a book? Okay, but now you know that the is the most common form that you've heard up to this point of the verb avoir. You only have the j'ai, the e sound, which is different, and of course vous avez, but you have tu as, il a, elle a. So if you said elle a, that's only normal because that's the most common form you've heard so far. Now livre, is it un livre? Is it une livre? It's un livre. Now how do you remember that un is the masculine article? Well, I always told my students, since it's like being hit in the stomach with a football helmet, like you just got tackled and someone led with their helmet, which they shouldn't do. It's more natural to expect boys in that kind of a situation, and so use the masculine corresponds to the sound Does that help you? No? Well, I tried. Remember that is the masculine sound of the indefinite article. So, elle a un livre. Elle a un livre. Elle a un livre. Okay, number next one. We have here, now we have vous, so we have a different sound to the verb avoir. It's vous avez. Why is it vous avez, not vous avez? What's this? This is a business. Remember, I've mentioned in the past what's called a liaison. That when you have the spelling of the word vous, I don't really want you to focus on it at this point, but I will tell you there's an S at the end of the spelling of the word vous. And when that next word starts with a vowel sound, a, ave, a, that S, which normally is silent, suddenly energizes. It becomes alive, and it forms a liaison to make the words flow together smoothly. So where usually you say vous, now it's vous, and this is S becomes a z sound. Vous avez. Okay, I'll just throw it in there for your edification. We're not going to focus on spelling right now, but just to explain why sometimes letters suddenly are pronounced that you didn't hear pronounced before. It's because of this liaison, this connection between words that happens when the next word starts with a vowel sound. Vous avez, what's this number right here? Now you've learned six up to this point, but you're not going to say vous avez six livres. If you do, people will just say, c'est un étranger, hein? He's a foreigner, that man. But they'll understand you very well. But the number six, before a noun that starts with a consonant, remember how I just mentioned that consonants at the end of a noun or a word are going to be pronounced when normally they're not pronounced if the next word starts with a vowel sound. For example, if I want to say 6 eggs, an egg, plural for egg is kind of strange sounding word. If I want to say 6 eggs, it's six œufs. Six œufs. There's an X, not surprisingly, at the end of six. And that X takes on the sound Z when it's followed by a vowel sound. It's six œufs. Okay? Here, livre does not start with a vowel sound. It starts with a consonant. Livre. So that X at the end of six is not pronounced. It's only pronounced when followed by a vowel sound, or when it's said in isolation, like you're counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But when followed by a noun, which starts with a consonant, you'll simply say si. So this would be vous avez 6 livres, not vous avez 6 livres. Vous avez 6 livres. Now if you say 6, it's no big deal at this point. but I just want to explain why you might be surprised by the sound of the number 6 and other numbers as we go along. I have some unidentified number books, could be 4, 5, 6. What's that? Yeah, j'ai des livres. And let's try one more here. One more group of 3 here. What is the word for a calculator? Ha, got you. You said calculatrice. And it's not calculatrice, it's la calculatrice. Well, yes, calculator is calculatrice. But make sure you say the definite article when you present to me a vocabulary word, or when you review your vocabulary. It's la calculatrice. And therefore, you know that it's a feminine word. And so when we come to this sentence here, when we want to say, you've got a calculator, how would you form the word a? Is it un or is it une? Which is it? All right, remember the old football example there? Calculatrice, we just said is feminine, so you're certainly not going to say calculatrice, because un calculatrice sounds much too masculine, too brutal. Yeah, tu as une calculatrice. Tu as une calculatrice. Voilà, c'est ça. Ensuite, let's do 2 more here. Very quickly, I've got 4 calculators. Even though it looks like 3, it's really 4. How would you say that? Yeah, j'ai. Now, do you have to think about whether calculatrice is masculine or feminine to say the word 4? No. The number 4, 4, is not an article. It doesn't change and modify. 4 is 4 is 4 is 4. It'll never change. J'ai 4 calculatrices. Voilà. Et puis enfin, pour finir, to finish this up here, he has some calculators. Again, not much thought is necessary, is it? We say some, whether the word is masculine, feminine, or starting with a vowel, by saying des. That's right. So what's the sentence? Il a des calculatrices. Voilà, c'est ça. Bon, je pense que ça va suffire. I think that's going to be enough. Tomorrow, in the course of, or at least whenever you meet with me again, in the course of next class, we'll look again at lesson 1.25, but this time, or that time we'll look at the tests located at the end of this lesson. And so nothing remains for me to say except for salut. What? Are we starting over again? I didn't tell you. Salut is used both as a greeting to say hello and as a means of saying goodbye. It's a very versatile word. So salut, au revoir.